Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder and team leader of Streamlined Properties. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
I love when we're breaking new ground on the show, even this many episodes in, and today we're going outside of the country for a predominant view about outside of the U.S. real estate investing with my guest, Mike Cobb of ECI Development. We're going to talk a lot about Belize, other countries like Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras. This is what we're talking about, investing in inspired lifestyles for adventurous souls. And it all started 30 years ago when Mike took a trip to a country he didn't even know where it was. That was Belize, and that started this journey. Let's go. This is episode 164 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Mike Cobb. Mike is the CEO of ECI Development, one of Latin America's most exciting diversified resort development companies providing inspired lifestyles for adventurous souls. And Mike is the author of the new book, How to Buy Your Home Overseas. We're going to talk international living and international development. Mike, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, good to be with you. Episode 164. You've been doing this a while.
Yeah, been at it a while, but as I was saying to you before, we haven't gone international very much. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you about this and your 30 years of experience going outside of America. But where did it all start? When was the first time that you remember real estate being a thing that you thought was going to play a role in your life?
Wow, that would have been 1993, so 31 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So I went to Belize with a buddy of mine. He was working. He's an asset protection attorney. He was setting up trusts for doctors down there. He said, "Hey, you want to go to Belize?" Tell the story. So I'm sitting I was in the computer business. I'm sitting in my cubicle in Springfield, Virginia.
Yes, I'll go.
It was funny because he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, Cobster, what are you doing this weekend?" It was I think it was a Tuesday. I said, "I don't know why." He goes, "Do you want to go to Belize with me? I got an extra ticket. We're going down Thursday, come home Sunday." And I'm sitting there and this is pre-Google days,
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Did you even know where it was?
No. Finally, I have to fess up. I'm like, all right, where are we going again?
Yeah.
So I went down with them, had a great time. I said, "Dude, the next time you're coming down, let me know. I'll come back again." So the second trip down might have been 2 or 3 months later because he was going pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And we found these 2 condos right off the ocean. They were a beautiful ocean view. They were one off the ocean, but looked out across a big area. And we bought them, right? We bought them. And so that was 1993 ocean. I call them ocean front, but I mean, one off the ocean, but still direct ocean. Yeah. And you ready for this, Jonathan?
Everyone's going to get upset.
$80,000 oceanfront condo. Right.
Yeah. And how developed was Belize at that time? Because 30 years ago, I don't think there was too much development, at least, of course, not to the level that it is now.
It's true. So Belize is a Caribbean country. It's on Central America, right? And so the country itself is about 180 miles up and down, about 70, 80 miles wide. And then there's this tiny little island off the coast. And we'll come back to this later because I think this is important for the real estate investor. But we ended up buying on this little island, Ambergris Key, off the coast. There was nothing. I mean, it was a tiny little town, 2,000 people, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a fishing village. All the streets were sand, not a single piece of pavement on the entire island, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's changed a lot in 30 years. And we watched it and facilitated, but yeah.
Yeah. When you guys bought those properties, were you thinking investment or you were thinking of, now we have a place to go every time, we can come every 2 months and stay in our own place?
Both actually, because he was coming down a lot more than I was. But for me, it was an easy trip. I could hop on a plane, be in Belize by lunchtime on a Thursday, for example. And then I could catch the later flight out on Sunday, get home at midnight. So I had just 2 days off. I could get like really kind of 3-4 days of vacation, which was tremendous. And so I was using it. But right out of the gates, we said, no. We're going to turn this into like there was no Airbnb. Like we were running ads, him in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, me in the Washington Post, little classified ads in the back, right? Condo for rent, $800 a week or whatever it was. Anyway, so it was a business immediately as a real estate investment, but fun too, right? I mean, go to Belize. I mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah. How did you manage the investment at that time with little to no internet, and trying to get people in there, through classified ads where they think, am I going to die? I'm not sure, but it sounds like a good deal. So try it out.
Yeah. So fax machine.
yeah. Faxing the contracts. Yeah. Great.
And the U.S. Postal Service mail me a check, right? These people mailed checks. And then we had a property manager down there, a real estate agent on the island who would give people the keys and get the keys back and stuff like that. But it was really homegrown, right? It was totally homegrown.
I think a lot of people forget. So I grew up going with my dad to timeshares like on Sanibel Island in Florida. So we were used to it. They weren't short-term rentals at the time, but that's really what they were. They were modified timeshares that people were renting out the other times in. So I understood it. And we did exactly what you said. Back then, there was no internet. We picked up the keys from the local realtor's office who did only these on the island. And they knew every nook and cranny. We never had a bad stay because we didn't need the internet. We didn't know it existed. It didn't exist. Right. But they would say like, well, based on what you liked last year, here's one, but this one has a pool. And we're like, okay.
Right. Yeah. And you walk and they give you a piece of paper with, 10, 15 restaurants on it. Right?
Yeah. Right. And that's all there was. So you went to them all. So after you got that first one done, when did you start thinking growth, as something that could grow into much more because you were still in the computer business at the time?
I was. Can I take a little side tangent?
Yeah, of course.
It's very relevant. So we bought the first build, like there was think about a horseshoe with the open end of the horseshoe, ocean, right? So the guy had built 11 condominiums in a horseshoe with a pool in the middle, right? And there were 4 in each building. So 44 condos overlooking a pool, ocean, right out there. Yeah. We were in the second horseshoe and we were the second building in. So the third building, the fourth building, and the fifth building to kind of come up one side of that horseshoe were in various stages of construction. The last one was just kind of a hole in the ground, right? They started working on foundation.
Yeah.
Over the course of the whole year, 93 and into 94, literally nothing was happening on those buildings. So Joel and I were sitting by the pool one day and the developer came by and we're just chit-chatting with them. And we said, Jim, what's the deal? Why aren't you working on these buildings, right? And he tells the tale of woe. It was the first real wake up to me of we don't know what we don't know, which is a primary lesson in my book, right? We don't know what we don't know, right? So Jim had come down from Canada. I don't know, he brought maybe $3-4 million, I don't know, something like that. He bought the land, he built a bunch of the buildings. And then when people like me walked off the beach, right, and said, oh yeah, I want one of these. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful, right? He'd say, okay, great. It's $100,000. I said, we bought ours for 80 and I'm going to come back to that. It's $100,000 or $120,000, whatever it was, whatever the price was. And I'd say, great. Okay. I've got, $30,000 I can put down. He's like, well, no, there's no financing. Like I need $100,000, right? Or whatever the price was. And so Jim had a very tough decision to make. He could tell people to go kick the sand and get out of here, or he could take $30,000 down and do the best he could on these payments, right?
Yeah.
So Jim was financing probably 90% of his condos to the buyer, right? And so Jim's sitting on all this paper. So we're sitting there and that's why he can't build the next building, says he doesn't have any money. Right?
Too much paper, not enough cash paper. Yeah.
You got it. You got it. And I know your audience understands this stuff perfectly, which is great because it makes it an easy story to tell, right? So we're sitting there with Jim and just by the pool. And we said, because the condos should have cost 100, but my buddy, he's a lawyer and he's a negotiator, right? So when Jim said, I remember in the negotiation, Jim said, well, can you pay full payment? Can you wire the money? And we're like, yeah, we'll pay. And that's when we negotiated a 20% discount, right? Off the
Yeah. And you were buying two at once, even though separately, that's always like a bargain. My dad was like the ultimate. He would try to negotiate anything at any time, no matter what, including like a 25-cent Coke, in 1980. He doesn't care.
No, that's my business partner. It's the negotiation, right? So anyway, but because we were going to make a full payment, the 20% discount, and probably because we're buying two. And so my business partner, he says to Jim, he goes, "Hey, Jim, would you sell us your paper for a 20% discount?" And I'll never forget Jim's face. He goes, "Yes."
Yeah. I mean, that really does solve the problem, because he was stalled in development and he had taken too much paper.
Absolutely. But he didn't have a choice. Like, he could have missed the sales, right?
He had to get something going on the closed unit so there's activity. Yeah.
Right. So we started a mortgage company early 94. And Joel went out to a bunch of his doctor clients and stuff like that. I went to a bunch of my buddies in the computer business, and we raised a couple, $3 million. And we went back down to Belize and we bought a bunch of paper, and then we were out of money. And the need in Ambergris Caye, just in Ambergris Caye, was huge, because look, no bank in Belize was going to lend you money as a foreigner, and no bank up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is going to lend money on a condo in Belize, right? So there's this big hole in the marketplace. And so we went back out for a second round of money, and we burned through that pretty quick, got it placed. We're buying paper, right? And by the way, these notes were 12 to 14% interest, okay? And we were buying them for 20 cents on 20%, the dollar, 8 cents on the dollar, right? So, I mean, like, really a good deal. But we couldn't raise money fast enough. So we actually then applied for a banking license in Belize, and we finally received it in 2003. Our mortgage company became a bank. And so we just celebrated 20 years as basically a mortgage bank in Belize, but for foreigners buying property. And now we do business all over the region. It's not just Belize, but we serve foreigners wanting to buy property in these countries where the local banking institutions won't touch them. So anyway,
that's hugely important for people who don't know how it works outside. There was a prior episode with Becky Nova who had properties in Dominican Republic, and when they were trying to figure it out, fortunately, her husband had dual citizenship, so they could make it work with the banks. But otherwise, it's really difficult to do. This is really something that's still an issue today, right?
It absolutely is, which is why our bank is probably the largest mortgage lender to foreigners in the region, right? Now, all the domestic banks serving the domestic folks is big, huge, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
But foreigners buying property, we're probably the biggest, I would say, doing that. And so how that segues into the development side was, again, my business partner, he's a lawyer. He deals with contracts and banks and money and things like that. I'm the boots on the ground guy. And as I was going in to inspect the collateral in these various developments, or even single family homes where we did some paper buying as well, I was just blown away by, like, look, the really, I would say back then, the expensive stuff, $350, $500 and up, like, it was pretty good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there were a lot of properties that were, even like $60,000 properties, right? 60 to 250, say. I would walk in, and just to give a couple examples, like, every door handle in the place would be at a different height, right? Right?
Yeah.
4 guys putting in door handles. Well, where are they?
Right. They just put it in at their height. Yeah.
Right. Countertops too high, too low. Lights in the bathroom. You have a light in the bathroom, but just be in the wrong place. Just bring it forward, and now it works. Right. But the one example that just I wish I would have had the presence of mind to take a picture, but nobody, like, we didn't
cell phone.
We didn't have cameras with us all the time, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I walked into this condo. There was one outlet in the living room with 2 outlet strips with extension cords running to outlet strips to get power around this living room.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm talking, Joel and I are talking, and I'm just like, dude, like this stuff would be free to fix. Outlets cost a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Not a huge expense. Yeah.
Free to fix. And I said, we really should build a North American standard product for about the same price point, that would meet a North American's expectations. And we did. We bought a little resort that was going into foreclosure in 1998. And that was the genesis of our development company, because we finished out that project, and then we expanded further and grew our business outside of Belize to other countries as well. But in the end, what it really was in both cases, seeing a need that was not being served in the case of the mortgages, or not being served well in the case of inexpensive middle class kind of homes and condos, and then doing a better job of serving that need and serving that consumer.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because a lot of people will kind of miss the boat on things or think, well, what can I do to do that? And you guys were like, no, let's get into this market. Now let's fix it. I'm curious about this, though, because as we were talking, what's the relationship between you as the bank and then the local banks in the area, and then you as a North American developer who's kind of catering to people coming from America there versus the local developers? How's that relationship work over? Because now you've done it in a lot of different places, so I'm sure it's gotten smoother. But I would guess in the beginning it may not have been as smooth.
Well, let's start with the banking. First of all, Belize, the bank is in Belize, and the banking laws in Belize are very solid. I mean, in fact, they're extremely solid. And, I'm not going to get into a lot of the politics of it, and things like that. But at the end of the day, the banking legislation in Belize is solid, and the regulatory agency is thorough, and I would say maybe hounding. I'm on the board, and
And in general, it's in the assistance of tourism, which is good for everybody in the area. Much less what people consider gentrification of areas, but it brings much more money to the area, especially back then.
It does. It's liquidity to the developers, and it's not just U.S. developers; it's Canadian developers,
of course,
Asian developers. It's local developers who want to sell to a foreigner. Right, that's the key. Right, that's that piece. And so the relationship with the bank and the regulatory bodies is good, but again, they are thorough, solid, and they basically take their instructions from the U.S. regulators. I mean, the U.S. helps them regulate the banks in the country. So
it's better, though, isn't it? Better that it's stricter, because if not, then it's you have an uneven playing field all around.
100%. I like the tough regulatory environment. Two reasons. One, it's the right thing to do. Let me just say that, right? Banking is one of those things where it's the right thing to do. I mean, you're taking care of other people's money. There's a big custodial fiduciary responsibility when you're taking care of other people's money. And so having stringent, strong regulatory systems definitely does that. The other thing is it is a high hurdle to somebody else coming into the business.
Right. You have to really dot the I's, cross the T's. And I think that makes it more viable as a product for you. Like you said, that's why you've been at it 20 years, because you knew, hey, look, you've presented all the hoops. We're going to jump through them all, say thank you, and then get up and running.
And we did. Now, as it relates to the relationship between ECI and the bank, actually, the regulatory authorities do not let me. I'm on the credit committee. I'm chairman of the credit committee. I have to absolutely absolve myself from any discussions of financing any of our properties. Right. So the rest of the folks in the management committee. So no, again, it's a good regulatory environment. We don't actually finance our company because that would be related party transactions. So we have no related party transactions. I really kind of keep two hats, and I do a pretty good job of keeping them separate. But obviously, helping any development in the region, whether it's ours or other people's, right? It's the rising tide. So we can help other developers bring more people, sell more properties. It creates a destination. It's the old adage, and I think the U.S. consumers, the U.S. marketplace, business people get this. Not so much in Latin America. There's still a little bit of I call it a starvation mentality in Latin America, but maybe rightly so. I mean, it's a thin market. Liquidity is low. If you get any, I get less, right? Zero sum kind of thing, right? Whereas, the U.S., we understand if I have a McDonald's on one corner, I can't wait till they stick the Burger King, KFC, and Wendy's on the other three corners, because now we're a destination, right? We'll all do better. And that's a faith thing. Right. I mean, I'm sure it's empirical, too. I'm sure there's empirical evidence that shows it out. But in a country like Belize, for example, or other places, I mean, I think there is no empirical evidence. So you would have to take that on faith. Right. And if you've grown up in a zero sum, you get any, I get less. Like, that's a big challenge to, sort of the belief system in entrepreneurial belief system. Right. So But we as a bank and we as a company, we certainly believe that, and we're helping our competitors, so to speak, do more business, because we do know that it ultimately benefits the destination, which is Belize in this case, and our businesses there will succeed more as the destination grows. And we've seen that over 30 years, the amount of growth has been exponential. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would think that it was really important that you identified that your buying avatar was going to be someone coming from North America over or a different country, because that helped you figure out, well, we need to up the standards of how, what you were saying with the outlets. Because what I think a lot of investors fail with now is they have a product, but they're not thinking of who the ideal avatar is. So they're just trying to market to everybody. But if you market to everybody, you're going to fail. You really knew right away, we want someone to come in, so we need to get up to those standards. So when they come over, they don't say, like, well, I don't want 6 extension cords, to put my hair dryer 3 rooms away. Am I right on this?
Yeah, bullseye, Jonathan. And that I think you bring up a really good point for your listeners as well, that we have to clearly define who our customer is, so that we can deliver the product or service that fits them best, right? Because look, there will always be competition. Look, it's a glory day when you're the only game in town, but that it rarely happens, and it doesn't happen for long when it happens, right? So you have to figure out what your unique selling proposition is, but then you have to figure out who the target consumer for that is. And when you can match those two up, you nailed it.
Yeah. And so once you started building it, did you get your proof of concept and then figure that out? Okay, it is working. What were the people who are coming over, the people that we're talking to are resonating with this, so now we can upscale?
Yeah, and some of it is that double down, right? The stuff that works, you double down on. The stuff that's not working, you're kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it, much of it, let's just be honest. Look, one of the things that we're so used to in the U.S., right? We have an MLS system, right? And there is no MLS system. Now, in the last 10 years, they've sort of come up with a couple MLSs in Central America. But for the first 20 years of my working there was no MLS. And what that means is there's no hard data. Every bit of data is anecdotal, right? All anecdotal. And so business intelligence is communication pathways, it's relationships, it's getting any data you can get your hands on and trying to make some sense of it, right?
Yeah.
So almost all of our business was trial and error, right? Because there was no data set that you could actually count on, so to speak. Yeah.
Right. You couldn't just run the comps for brand new 2-bed, 1-bath condos near the water. It's just not a thing.
No. And here's the worst thing. Somebody could put up a price of, $250 for a condo, whatever it was, right? You have no idea what it sold for. They might have listed it at $250.
Could sold for $80.
Exactly. You don't know. There's nowhere to get that data. Yeah, no. Yeah. It's Wild West, Jonathan.
Oh, yeah.
Truly the wild, wild West in a lot of ways, which I like. I like the wild, wild West, but a lot of folks wouldn't like it.
When you started developing and people started buying, what were those all vacationers looking to hold them as short-term rental, or did some people start moving? Because now, after going through the pandemic, I think it's much more popular for expats to move, and it started to trend that way anyway. But back then, when you started, what was the population of the people who were buying your developments?
Good question. And by the way, it would vary by country, whether it was Belize or Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, right? The numbers would be different. In Belize, where we started, I would say that the number of full-timer snowbird, I call a snowbird a full-timer, right? Yeah. 6 months to a year, right? That kind of thing. So a full-timer residential use client might have been a third, vacation/investment side of things, 2/3. Today, that number, and it also depends on product type too.
Yeah.
I would say that number probably hasn't shifted a whole lot. What we're seeing is a trending, as you said, with the digital nomads post-pandemic, right? And we're starting to see a much greater interest on the part of people who want to use it more because they can, right?
Yeah.
And what's kind of interesting, I think we're still, look, I have a whole presentation and some articles I've written on this, but for the first time in human history, work and the location of work have been decoupled for for many people, right? And this is huge. I mean, you just go all the way back to the agricultural revolution, right? Pre-agricultural revolution, you had to go kill the bear and pick the berries, right? Then and then agriculture came along. You still had to tend to the flocks and tend to the crops, right? Industrial revolution, you still had to show up and work a machine, right? And then you have this post-industrial revolution they started talking about in the 60s and 70s, right? Yeah, I mean, you probably remember megatrends.
Yeah.
Right. And future shock, Alvin Toffler, future shock, right? And so you had these guys really contemplating where it could go, but you had these old management systems that were overlaying, like this Frederick Winslow Taylor, industrial management model that he and Henry Ford put together, right?
Yeah.
On knowledge workers. Well, we all knew 30 years ago that most of us could work remotely, but we couldn't because of the management system. So now, like, COVID's broken that free. But Jonathan, your point is really very, very, very important. I would say we are literally just peeling that paper brown skin off the onion. We haven't even gotten to the white part of the onion yet. Right? Yeah. Look, this has implications for society, for travel, for property ownership, for investment, for so many medical care, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Just again, so there's all these elements that are kind of and I don't know where it's going to go. None of us know where it's going to go, right? But the better job we do at kind of forecasting some of this stuff and putting ourselves a little bit out in front of it, the better. And so to answer your question, sorry, big
yeah, no, it's great.
Chasing a rabbit around a field here, but I'm coming back. Is this, that the trending of interest for people who want to either not retire, move to the destination that they always wanted to do in retirement. I'll use Belize. I mean, we'll talk about other countries too, but
yeah, sure.
But Belize is where we kind of got started, right? It's a fly fishing destination. It's a diving destination, right? So if a lot of people said, you know what, when I'm 65, I'm moving to Belize, I'm going to fly fish, right? Many of these people don't have to wait till they're 65. Right. They can move down at 55 and go fly fishing every weekend or every morning and work, and right. And so this mental prepping, this mental direction is happening. You said it. I concur. We're seeing it. The transactional piece of people actually doing it, about the time people really started to think about this and get serious about it, interest rates popped.
Yeah, right.
Interest rates pop. So all of a sudden people's, desire, liquidity probably, tampered down a little bit. But at any point that the lid comes off of that one, there are going to be a lot of people saying, I'm doing it. I'm pulling the trigger.
I think so too. And I think they've been able to get the practice from the pandemic on of going to short-term rentals in all these areas and kind of figuring out, like, wait, how much does it cost to buy something here? What's the cost of living? Okay. Yes. Like, this is astronomical. Wait, I don't need a car. I can just have a bike. I mean, these things it's much different. And I think a lot of people, it started when people were moving out of the cities just to like more suburban or farther away because they didn't have to commute. But then quick thinkers were like, well, how about Bali? I have nothing else to do.
Right. Or we always think about, the developing world, but a lot of people are looking at France, right? They want to live in the south of France or Italy or, whatever. I mean, Portugal is a popular place too. So it's not always the developed world. People are thinking about wonderful locations anywhere and everywhere. Yeah.
Hey, it's Jonathan. You should know by now that these brief interludes are brand new and they're not going to be repetitive. And today I just want to remind you that we're looking for sponsors. We've been through 160 episodes and we've never done a paid sponsorship yet. We've done some sponsorships for our friends, companies that we've worked with, but now we're looking for paid sponsorships. If you want information on that, you can go to zenandtheartofrealestateinvesting.com. There's a sponsorship tab. All the information's there, and we're looking for companies that are real estate adjacent, real estate involved, and that's what it really is. It needs to match the mindset of what we're doing, which is a mindful approach to real estate investing. So you're probably not going to hear a casino ad or a Doritos ad, but I'm looking for companies that I've already worked with, people who have real coaching programs, not guru things. So that's it. That's what's out there. Let's get back to the show. You You said one term before that piqued my interest because it's medical tourism, and I've been seeing it all over with just countries that have better medical systems for certain surgeries or things that can be done. And a lot of people are going on these things. They're probably staying in short-term rentals or hotels, but more likely they'd like a home if they're going to have recovery time there. I mean, this could be a huge business going forward, considering the way that medicine is in America.
Funny you say that. We have a very significantly large piece of property next to our Best Western property in Belize that we will be developing into a medical tourism facility because, again, right, these are condos, so they're not homes, but they have kitchens. I mean, they're fully fully functional, right, for people that are there for a week or 2 or 4 or 6, for the surgery, pre, post recovery, that kind of thing. Yeah, the pairing up of the medical tourism and the short-term rental, short, medium term, whatever you want to call that, is a powerful combination. And so, I have a dentist here. I live in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. My dentist is, 15 minutes away. They can't see me for 6 months. It's always like 6 months.
I just want a teeth cleaning, man. Come on.
Right. And I don't know my schedule in 6 months. I have no idea.
I know. Well, God forbid you miss the appointment too. Then you're like, oh, can I just get you're like at 2027. You're like, okay.
Right. So you know what? And I lived in Nicaragua for 14 years, right?
Oh, wow.
So I moved there with my wife and my 2-year-old daughter. We moved down there to get our Grand Pacifica community started. We ended up having another little daughter that we moved in 2002 with, 2-year-old and Carol and Amanda and I, and then Emily came along a couple of years later. And we had great medical care, and I can talk about that too. But, then we moved back to the U.S. as my daughters got older, and some good stuff, great stuff happened, actually. Some scholarships to some dance programs, high school dance programs, and things like that. So we moved back, and I've been struggling with my dentist for like 7 years, Jonathan. And all of a sudden, remember that commercial? You go, I could have had a V8.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We're dating ourselves a little bit. But
that's okay.
But like 7 years after, like struggling with my dentist, I'm like, you know what? I can just have my teeth cleaned when I go to Nicaragua because I'm in Nicaragua 4 or 5 times a year for our community down there. So I started having my teeth cleaned in Nicaragua again.
It makes sense, though. Yeah, it's interesting that you said Nicaragua because I did a build trip with a company called Give Back Homes in Tippy Tapa, and we built 3 homes over 3 days in Tippy Tapa from the ground up. We basically they were hut homes, so they had no front. We built the front on and then an extra bedroom. It was only 3 days, and there was like 15 of us, and then Techo, who's like the Habitat for Humanity over there, helped. Yep. So I that was very, very interesting to me, and it also gave me kind of an insight into what it's like to just live in these areas of Nicaragua that I had no experience with. And there's a lot of development going on there and other places that we've seen that does help the community, but also helps tourism. So I see it as a double win. But again, I'm not a native to the area, so I don't know what their views are on it.
Well, you know what? It can be a double win. I think, look, we've been around for 31 years, and I think the players that have been around for, say, a decade or more are generally doing it right and well. Right?
You wouldn't make it 30 years if no one really wanted you there anymore.
Right. The fly-by-nighters, they come and go, right? And so the people who are doing development right, they're doing it in a sustainable manner, hiring a ton of locals. I mean, I would, 90%, I'm close on that number, but 90% of our entire ECI team is local in whatever country.
That's awesome.
Right. And, we do a ton of corporate social responsibility. But more important than that, by the way, I love the fact, Tippy Top, you pull that name out, like, holy shit.
I didn't even know. I mean, it's funny because the area and maybe other people who know, like we got to a main town and then they put us on a bus and we were going to go to the site. And then we started going down a dirt road and we're all like, where are we going? We really went down. I mean, these people, beautiful views of everything, but houses that didn't even have fronts. There was no front door. It was wide open and dirt floors.
Yep. So when we first purchased our property in Nicaragua in 2000, we bought it in the year 2000, it was an 11-kilometer dirt road, no electricity. And, really, I think maybe if I had to say less than 10 houses made out of concrete. Hundreds of houses with no doors on the front, plastic roofs. I mean, black plastic houses, right? Right. And today, The road is paved. We did most of that. There's 3-phase electricity running down. Almost every home is concrete. The standard of living in what they call it a municipality, we'd call it a county, right? The standard of living in our county is way elevated, and we do a lot of corporate social responsibility. But what we do that I think is even more important, Jonathan, is we support groups like yours. You mentioned Techo, the Habitat for Humanity folks, right? We do a lot of that kind of thing where we have groups, Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, college groups, things like that, that want to come in. We help provide all the baseline logistics because Purdue came in and built this incredible pedestrian bridge, right? Maybe a decade ago now. But anyway, they don't know how to get equipment and cable and welders.
You're not just go on Google that. It doesn't work like that.
Right. So we have leveraged our in-country presence to help these inbound organizations be able to function much more efficiently and effectively. And when we do that, sure, we go and the mayor will be there and the alcalde, which is town council, and other people, and maybe if it's a school project, the administrators and the teachers and the kids, we show up, right? And we have a party. We bring the sandwiches and the coolers with sodas, and we bring a piñata for the kids. And literally 30, 40 minutes after the party starts, we all get in our cars and we go away. And the mayor, the teachers, the town council, they all get to hang out and have a great time. And you know what? That relationship, we're not there for the credit. We're just there to do it, have a little fun, and let the community then own it themselves. And they do. And we've pushed that model across every one of our communities in all the countries that we work in, because it really delivers the goods, so to speak, to the community. And that again, there are lots of reasons to do something. There's the reason to do it because it's the right thing to do, right? It's a good thing to do, right? There's in many levels. But there is the practical benefit that, people ask about crime and stuff like that. I lived in Nicaragua for 14 years. My wife's a Blondie. I had 2 tow-headed daughters. We didn't look Nicaraguan. 14 years, we never had an issue ever once. And then on the other side of things, people talk about bribery. Oh, you got to pay people off to get stuff done. You know what? In 31 years of doing business, we've never paid a bribe.
I think they watch a lot of movies and just assume everything's corrupt. If you're building a real business, like you said, with true regulations, you're just following through on the way. I'm sure there's countries where there's more bribery, but I don't think it's not like this is the only way to succeed if you're not from the area.
No. But if you get the local community to be your advocates,
of course,
and you don't have to pay bribes, right? Because they're benefiting the whole.
It's really, very interesting. Let's pivot a little bit to your book because I want to give people some help about how to buy a home overseas. And this was part of your plan from 30 years ago is how are people going to get over there? But are we talking about vacation homes, new residents, or all of it? And then, of course, give us some tips from the book. So I think this can really help people because I personally have had a lot of people ask questions of me, hey, how can I get something out of the country? Is it going to be hard? Is it different in every country? And I don't really know the answers.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there's certainly what I'm going to call easier paths and more difficult paths, right?
Yeah.
If you want to be a developer, you want to be a developer in the U.S. That's a lot harder than just buying a condo or buying a multifamily, right? As opposed to developing a multifamily, right? So I think depending on what your level of activity and challenge is, there's things that are a lot easier, a lot more difficult. Let's just stay with the easy stuff if that's okay.
Yeah,
I think that probably makes sense for
helpful.
Most people. And so I think that of all the countries in the region that is the easiest, Belize is probably the easiest. English is the official language.
Yeah.
That's huge. And Spanish, Portuguese in Brazil, but Spanish everywhere else, right? And Belize is also common law as opposed to civil law. And so, in these Spanish-speaking countries, Mexico down, all contracts are legal in Spanish. You can have an English translation, but the contract itself is the Spanish version, right? So in Belize, everything's in English. It's common law. We understand it. Civil law is very different. I think that's a big, big deal. I'll circle back to Belize in a minute. We've talked a lot about that on a couple specifics. But the challenge, I think, and I would hate to pick on your readers. I said this on my Bigger Pockets podcast the other day.
Yeah.
Is, I think people who are experienced, your listeners are experienced. You mentioned, everything from the novice to the big time syndicators, right?
Yeah, for sure.
The novices actually will probably do the best because they're going to come with a humble approach anyway. Like they don't have the experience to say, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The danger for many people, especially those with a lot of real estate investment experience in the U.S., is a sense of confidence here. Don't get me wrong. I think experience is confidence on your home turf, right?
Yeah.
That's a great thing, right? But when you go outside your home country, not even home turf, home country, right?
Yeah.
You are in. It's like Dorothy. She gets swept up in the house, and bam, she lands down there, and she walks outside. She got Toto, and she says, "We're not in Kansas anymore, right?"
Yeah.
And no, there are no talking scarecrows and lions, but it is almost that different, right? For a place to do business, whether it's civil law, Spanish, the different rules, regulations. But the biggest difference, Jonathan, is this. When you work in the U.S. and Canada, but North America, U.S. and Canada, you are working in a seller beware environment. Think of all the regulatory laws and agencies and consumer advocacy groups like Ralph Nader, right? Lemon laws, right? You got all of this stuff that protects you, the consumer, from the evil seller, right? When you go to the developing world, you can go to France and probably not be this way, but if you went anywhere in the developing world, Bali, Central America, Africa, whatever, right? You are moving into the land of buyer beware. And we as consumers coming out of North America simply do not know how to operate, transact in that environment. We don't. And anybody who thinks they do is sorely mistaken. It is a different world, as different as Dorothy and Oz from Kansas.
Yeah.
And that was the genesis of the book, by the way. Look, most of these mistakes I made. The good news for me and for many people is I wasn't a real estate investor. I was a computer salesperson who kind of worked my way into it and have always approached everything with this incredible humility. And truly, humility is our strongest personal characteristic when we invest overseas. We need to ask the dumbest questions. We need to pretend like we don't know anything because we probably don't. Right? Confidence in the U.S. is bravado or hubris outside of North America.
Yeah, and the consequences could be so huge from just one assuming that you know something or thinking that it's going to work the same. That just may never happen. You could bomb all of your money on something like that.
You really can, and that's the worst case scenario, right? You make an investment, it doesn't work. The U.S. real estate market is extremely efficient. It's probably the most efficient real estate market in the world, right? In terms of friction costs, transactional costs in, transactional costs out, speed of entry, speed of exit, all that kind of stuff, right? Latin America, especially civil law countries, it doesn't have to just be Latin America, but civil law is a high friction environment and a high cost environment. So even if you made an investment and you got title to your property, but you're like, oh man, I didn't realize there was no hot water in this house. Surprise, right? So for example, that's one of my most favorite examples. I almost use it in all my presentation and speeches, right? Because I can put a picture up of this beautiful, beautiful bathroom. Nice. By the way, the lighting's good. The tile works great. Everything. The faucets are like Delta or Moen. They're nice faucets, whatever. And then I say, but would you think to get down on your hands and knees and look under the sink, right, where you would see a cold water pipe coming out of the wall with a Y splitter so that both of these taps up top on the sink have water, but neither of them's hot, right? It's a cold water pipe. And the shower doesn't have hot water either, right? And so, and it's a beautiful condo. It was a $400,000 condo looking to the Pacific Ocean, Costa Rica, in this particular example.
Yeah.
And you like, those are $1 million views. Those are $10 million views in California, right? $1 million views, $400,000 condo. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But now you
it's
find
just going to be cold in the shower.
Water showers, right? And so, I think and you say, oh, I don't want that. That's horrible. My wife hates it every time we go there because it's cold showers. You don't want to take them, right? Now you got to sell it. Okay. What do your friction costs back out? How long does it take, right? And so like the subtitle to my book is Get It Right the First Time, because it can be expensive or catastrophic at one end of the spectrum, but just simply expensive and time consuming and headache producing if we don't. And so my book has 30 questions that we should ask. One of them being, is there hot water, and how to look to see if there's hot water, right?
Yeah.
But title's a big one. Title's the one that can be catastrophic, right? Almost everything else you can kind of live with that. Take cold showers, put up a widowmaker. You know what a widowmaker is? Did you?
Not that for a shower.
Shower. Yes, it's this attachment that you put on your shower head that you hot wire electricity into. That actually,
I know why it's called the Widowmaker now.
Check it out. Anyway,
nothing like electricity and water to come together to make everything right.
Right there above your head, right?
Yeah.
So. Anyway, so some of them are, kind of like, okay, we can deal with it, but some of them are catastrophic. Title being the one, and I'll give just one example. I work in all these countries. I love all these countries.
Yeah,
and I'm not picking on the country, right? But in Panama, especially, they've got something called rights of possession. Okay, rights of possession means like whoever's got their house on it, right? Maybe for generations, 3, 4, 5 generations, they've lived there. They've got a nice house. I mean, it really isn't. It's made out of concrete. It's got, maybe a nice clay tile roof and a dock out in whatever, right? It's rights of possession. It's not title. It is not title. It's rights of possession, right? But one of the terms that a lot of what I would call sleazy realtors, because again, buyer beware, no licensing, buyer beware, right? I have a business card that says I'm a realtor. I am, even though I'm not, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway, right. A lot of them will use the term rights of possession title. Oh, this is rights of possession title. Well, that doesn't
sound like title to me.
It's not. Yeah. It's not. And so a lot of buyers who don't know that, if the paperwork's very official, because again, it's all in Spanish, it's all the meets and the bounds and the map and, right? And you sign away and off you go. But you don't own it. You don't own it, right? So I think that like at one end, it can be catastrophic. At the other end, it can be highly inconvenient, right? No hot water, right? And so everything in between. And so over the, 31 years, the mistakes we've made, the mistakes we've seen other people make, we've really tried to synthesize that into this book. But the book is much more than just that piece. Actually, on page, I'm going to just flip to page 43 because, I just want to you talk about humility, right? That's actually the last page of my personal story. Know thyself for, what's that say? For
excellent property buying overseas. Yeah,
excellent property buying overseas, right? To really be able to get it right the first time, we really do have to know ourselves, because a lot of things, come into play, and a lot of the book is about self-evaluation. A lot of it's lifestyle, like, how close to the grocery store do I want to be? How close to an English-speaking church? Is that important or not?
Yeah.
But many of these questions that relate to lifestyle are very quick to say, well, you know what? I bet a renter would like to be close to a grocery store. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe a church, maybe not a church, right? But you know what? If you're in your Airbnb ad said, we're 1 block away from the English speaking church, in this place or that place, right? That might actually get you more rentals, because somebody will be like, I love to go to church on Sunday. I'd love to go to church in Belize or Nicaragua or Costa Rica or Panama, because that would be a cool experience, right? But I want to go in English because I don't speak Spanish, right?
Just what you've said so far about those questions really makes sense to me, because I feel like you can really get excited when you're overseas. The prices sound great. So you can probably pull the trigger before you really even know anything. Just because it's this is tropical. This just seems amazing. I can't believe the prices. I can do this. And I can see people just kind of bypassing some of those steps because it runs a little differently and you don't really know what's going on. First time home buyers have a hard enough time, in America, and they are reading all the correct language most of the time. So it's like, this is really important. One other thing I wanted to note, because you said, part of your book is so other people don't make the mistakes so they can do it right the first time. And when I created this podcast, and when I think about any time that I answer someone, my hope is that they can learn from all the mistakes that we've made collectively as real estate investors over the years. Like, we're giving them the ideas not to mess up, That's why books are great. You read them, understand what was done. If you want to take the risk after that, then it's a little bit of an educated risk. At least you had someone saying, I probably wouldn't do that first. Does it feel good to you to be able to put these things out there and know, like, hey, this could really save someone from stepping in these potholes that you did, even though, of course, it turned out well?
Yeah, it does. It really does, Jonathan. Look, successful acquisition of a property overseas, whether it's my property or somebody else's, like, look, 99.9999, I don't know, some number of people are going to buy property overseas that aren't mine. Right. I mean, like,
yeah. Right. Just on a percentage. Yeah. Unless you own a lot more than I think.
I don't know. But I mean, you're right. I mean, we're going to pick up some tiny little percentage of the people that buy property overseas. But every single person who's looking for a property overseas, France, it's not America. It's not the US, right? Bali, Thailand, Costa Rica or Namibia, right? It doesn't matter. Anywhere outside your home country. This book will be a tremendous resource because it will help us change the way we think. First, from seller beware to buyer beware. How do we think in that environment, right? But then the concepts of humility, right? The 30 questions that give a good indication of the kinds of things we should be asking about, right? But then also this self-analysis tools. We've got 2 very powerful self-analysis tools that help us kind of think through a lot of things. Again, much more on the lifestyle side, but many of the lifestyle considerations are extremely important for a renter. So you want to, right? And then we move into things like culture shock and just sort of the medical tourism. We touch on the medical tourism in there, right? And medical care more than medical tourism. But again, the book really rounds out. But yeah, anybody looking for a property overseas would benefit from owning this book and really digesting, the material, because it's paper. Paper is cheap. When you start to transact on a physical asset, it gets expensive real fast.
Yeah. And I think that especially if you're not planning on moving and you are planning, as we discussed, like what started your journey and what I did in my past, which is you're going to use it as a short-term rental. You're going to rent it out when you're not there. A lot of people start thinking of themselves too much, and you're kind of running a mini business. So you have to think, like you were saying, of, well, maybe I like to be near this, but I don't think the majority of guests want to be next to a graveyard. That's not going to work for a lot of people. Doesn't bother me. But, busy roads or things like that, or, anything where there's going to be more noise is going to draw down your potential income on that. So that part sounds like it could be really helpful to me, just to really set up what their expectations are and clear out what their usage rate is going to be and what they want versus what, the other people are going to want if they're using it during that time frame.
Sound advice, Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yep. Mike, so where's the best place for people to get the book? Amazon, all the like, they can find it at any of those sites?
Yep, Amazon and probably a couple others coming up shortly. Right now, it's a Kindle book and a hard copy. And very shortly, I'm going to begin reading the book, and it will be produced as an audio book as well. Yeah,
that's a fun one. And is the best place to get in touch with you guys at ECIDevelopment.com?
Absolutely. Yes, that's the best. Yep.
Awesome. I really appreciate this. This is like very eye-opening to me and exciting. We were talking before. I really like opening up new avenues that we haven't talked about, and we've only had a teeny bit of international. So this is a great one to add to the mix 164 episodes in. So I'm glad you got in touch, and I really appreciate you spending the time with me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jonathan. It's been fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right. That was Mike Cobb. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next episode. You should be ready by now to know that at the end of every episode, I'm now giving you previews of what episode is coming up next time. And the next episode to drop is episode 165 with my guest, Michael Kramer of Freed by Real Estate, also the co-author of a book with Chris Voss. Yes, that Chris Voss from Split the Difference. Their book is called Empathetic Leadership. Michael has a history of business that he transitioned to real estate and syndications and real estate in the Midwest with his company, Freed by Real Estate. This is a great show. We got along great, and you'll hear it on the show. And camaraderie is really what it's about. A lot of these shows and a lot of these episodes, I've become friends with my guests, and it's a great way for me to meet investors and let you listen in on our conversations. So we'll see you next episode with Michael Kramer.